Skyrim just got a massive update, which I tried to warn you all about just over a week ago. And with it brings not only several new PC features, a ton of bug fixes, brand new Creation Club DLC, Creation Kit upgrades, but also, most notably, paid mods. All of which we'll be discussing at length in this video, as well as going over the state of modding with SKSC64 and plugins that require it. Trust me, this isn't one you're going to want to skip. This is a behemoth of an update, which for those of you unaware is out now for PC via Steam, Microsoft Store, and the Epic Game Store, as well as PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series. And since this is going to be a long one, I do want to mention that the entire video will be timestamped from start to finish, as always here on the channel, so you can jump around as you please. Let's go ahead and start with the elephant in the room, that being paid mods, or as Bethesda's calling it, Bethesda Game Studios Creations. This is essentially just the old mods and Creation Club platforms being merged into one central hub, that being the Creations menu, where you can now find both free mods and paid creation content, both of which Bethesda are now referring to as Creations, in the same place. And yes, all of the old mods and creations have been merged to this system, so it's not getting rid of any of your content, and you'll still be able to use your Creation Club credits if you have any. They'll just be renamed to Creation Credits with some new artwork. Now, to be clear, anyone can continue uploading free mods, again, now known as Creations, just as they could with the old mod system. But alongside this is the arrival of the new Bethesda Game Studios Verified Creator Program, which all mod authors, or non-mod authors, I guess, can apply for. And if approved, they can submit their mods with a price of their choosing, that being from a set selection of options, and get paid royalties for each and every one of their creations sold in-game. So yes, to put it simply, paid mods are back. And at this point in the video, some of you may be expecting me to get quite miffed, especially if you've been following me for a while, and even more so if you saw my gut reaction to this news on Twitter, which was nothing but pure disappointment. But to be frank, this system does actually seem to be really well thought out, and dare I say, it might even be kind of promising, as it genuinely feels like they really cared about introducing this properly, as good as they really could with a paid mod system, and they obviously received a whole lot of feedback from existing verified creators that were a part of the old Creation Club system. I don't think BGS would have put it out the way that it is now if they didn't get some feedback from those mod authors. And for anyone that's worried about this, it does differ greatly from their disastrous attempt at paid mods, that being back on the Steam Workshop several years ago, where anyone and everyone could charge for mods, which, as I'm sure some of you might remember, resulted in aggressive cash grabs, previously free mods getting locked behind a paywall, stolen mods and assets showing up on the platform, mods breaking TOS by requiring things like the ENB or script extender, and more. This time around though, everything from the application process, the restrictions around paid creations and what they can and can't include, the submission process for verified creators, the flexibility offered to them compared to Creation Club while still being within reason, and the added benefit that comes with this new updated system, which even addressed one of the mod community's biggest complaints about the Creation Club, is just surprisingly fleshed out. The Creations menu itself is also just dramatically overhauled. It's pretty well designed. It definitely loads everything quicker, at least from my experience, and has a lot of easy to access quality of life improvements that make the overall use a much smoother user experience, especially when compared to the old mods and Creation Club offerings. So I know some of you are probably wondering why someone who has been against paid mods since, well, forever, isn't really upset or worried about this system. And I think the amount of restrictions and hurdles will speak for themselves for the most part. As to join the Verified Creator Program, you'll first need to apply, which, as you can see, is pretty much a mini job application, as you'll need a portfolio of work, which can either be mods you've created or a standard industry profile, and a few other requirements as well. You'll then need to wait for the approval process, which is done manually by Bethesda Game Studios and varies from applicant to applicant, and if approved, then we can move on to the next step, that being submitting content to be approved for sale. As well, creations can range anywhere from simple cosmetics or gameplay tweaks to entire new quests and encounters. There are requirements and restrictions to meet, as well as the submission and QA process to get through. It's not like you become a verified creator and magically you can just charge for whatever content you want. And while they have an internal document that apparently goes over more for verified creators, they did note publicly the general restrictions, such as creations must be standalone, so it cannot depend on other community releases, free or paid, which means it cannot depend on anything else on this creations platform or anything outside of the Creations platform either. So it most certainly cannot depend on things like the script extender, for example. Creations must also be all new to qualify for release, meaning you cannot repurpose older releases or work by other authors unless contracted. Creations cannot contain anything produced through generative AI, and Creations obviously need to adhere to the same terms and conditions as always. So that right there already settles two really big concerns I'm sure a lot of people would have with something like this. So no, a mod author can't just pull their mods and then put it behind a paywall. That's not how this works. On top of all that though, every paid creation has to go through an approval process, which can take an unknown amount of time depending on content's type and size, as it can influence how much QA testing is required at Bethesda Game Studios. They even noted that most creations are going to be sent back for quality review and require resubmission, meaning they'll have to keep going through the entire process until it passes. But they are allowed to submit multiple creations to the vetting process at once. But as expected, the process will take just as much time, if not longer, since you're submitting and taking up their queue. Of course, creators can also update or add something new to their creations, but it will require them to once again go through the resubmission process for verification. That being said, alongside solid restrictions that protect mod users and the mod community, there are also benefits over Creation Club, both for the mod authors and anyone interested in this type of paid content, as there's both way more flexibility with what mod authors can create for this system, and there's potential for much higher pay, given that they make solid content that people actually want to pay for. As when compared to Creation Club, content no longer requires a game patch to release, so the moment it's approved, it gets released. There is no restriction on including voiceover, meaning that creations can finally have voice dialogue. Content has no requirement to be lore friendly, although it will be noted when the effort is made, and they no longer need to be localized in multiple languages. These were all major hurdles which made for worse content, a worse user experience, and a lack of meaningful output. As I'm sure you've all noticed that the Creation Club hasn't exactly had a load of meaningful content, despite being around for several years. And some of you may have caught on to the really big thing to note, that being that adding new creation content to the system no longer requires game patches. This was one of the biggest complaints from the modding community, specifically on PC, as every time the game receives an update, mods like the script extender, address library, and occasionally all of the plugin mods requiring them break. So with this new system, BGS has finally addressed that exact complaint. But there are some other fun facts about this system. First off, teams are allowed to join the Verified Creator Program. They just have to be a registered business before they apply. In fact, Kinggath Creations announced that they plan on doing just that. I also question whether or not we can or will see other game studios make anything for this, as I think that could be really interesting. Not even necessarily just AAA studios, but even indie studios to try and make some money on the side by creating content for a big game and large audience, or even just other Xbox and Bethesda game studios. Another thing I am sure some of you might be worried about, but Bethesda has made sure to answer, is that verified creators are still allowed to release free mods, including on other platforms. So BGS isn't trying to lock these people down for themselves. They can continue releasing free content as always, just as we've seen with those a part of the Creation Club. And I've already seen several mod authors that mention that they are going to sign up for this program, but they do plan on still releasing free mods. Unfortunately though, there is some bad news, as with this system, we have not seen a change in PlayStation's stance on external assets. So both free and paid user-generated creations with external assets are still not allowed on PlayStation platforms. This is going to disappoint a number of you, as a lot of you PlayStation players commented on some of my previous videos, hoping for this to change with the upcoming updates for these games. But unfortunately, Sony has shown that they won't budge for them when it comes to their strict content restrictions. Now, another big question I'm sure everyone will have about this is, will this creation system be coming to Fallout 4 and or Starfield? And while Bethesda refuses to confirm as such, I can guarantee you that this system will be coming to Fallout 4 with its next-gen update, which is still due this year, but might be delayed to next year for the TV show, and for Starfield in early 2024, which they actually previously announced. In fact, in that Starfield announcement, they even referred to mods as creations in brackets, which had people confused at the time, thinking that only Creation Club was coming, but now that they're calling mods creations officially, it all makes sense now. Now, the system wasn't just added without any new content, as we also got several new pieces of Creation Club content for anyone interested, including East Empire Expansion by Kinggath Creations, which adds a new automated mercantile system, new quests, fully voiced NPCs, and more. Legendary Dungeons Dwarven Delves by Trainways, which adds 2 unique and perilous dungeons, apparently offering players tons to delve into. Kaya the Thief by Unoctium, which introduces a new voiced Nord follower. Ildmari Anti-Mage by Nero, which simply adds a new Thalmor robe to your wardrobe. Winterfrost by the Dog of War, which adds a brand new player home unlocked by a short quest. Arquebus by Schubergler, which introduces a new dungeon rune to explore, where you'll face Dwemer-made Centurions and acquire the unique weapon Arquebus with 4 variations, which is essentially just a dwarven gun. And lastly is Shade Tree Lodge by Eleonora, which adds a new cozy player home on the water. Of course, not all of these are available on PlayStation. In fact, apparently only Winterfrost and the Shade Tree Lodge are, but that's it. 7 paid mods to go with this launch, so feel free to share your thoughts on them down in the comments. And before we dive into the patch notes, I do briefly want to call out some of the additional improvements made with the creation system, as the website has been revamped with a visual overhaul, a new like system overriding the old 5-star system, sharing improvements, and support for markup formatting with hyperlinks, which I've mostly seen as a way to advertise social media so far. For content uploads, there are now multi-platform profiles, so authors no longer have to upload and maintain several separate pages when uploading content for multiple platforms, so a single page can support Xbox, PC, and/or PlayStation, even if different binary files are required. They added support for drafts, so a creation can be made and tested without actually publishing it, improved management UX, play stats, showing every time a creation is loaded into gameplay to represent the true popularity of creations, and category consolidation and restrictions. Now, there's also been an editor wiki upgrade for Skyrim and Fallout 4's creation kit, Fallout 3 and New Vegas' Gek, and Oblivion's construction kit. As for the actual patch itself, it's no Cyberpunk Update 2.1 or anything, but I'm genuinely pretty content with what BGS has done here. As beyond the new creations menu, they added a missing creation check feature to resolve the missing creations error when loading a save file, the ability to store your active load order and retrieve it from Bethesda.net. The ESL range has been doubled to 4,096 records. Source scripts for several creations have been released as creator resources, and they also added a resource pack to the game to assist with the development of new creations, which should hopefully assist with what can actually be accomplished on PlayStation. There have also been a load of new bug fixes in the base game, with 44 lines listed, which fixes everything from crashes to performance issues to terrain gaps and much more. This honestly feels like the most amount of bug fixes I've seen in a BGS patch notes for a very long time. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is more than all of the Starfield patches combined, which is great to see for a change. Alongside the base game though, a significant amount of the pre-existing creations have received bug fixes as well, with some even adding some small new content. Most of it though is really just localization fixes and some critical issues that have been resolved as well. But we're not done yet, as PC actually got some notable upgrades, as they have finally added ultra-wide support to Skyrim. So the game now supports 16:9, 16:10, 21:9, and 32:9. Something a surprising amount of you were asking for in the comments on my more recent Skyrim and Fallout 4 videos, so hopefully we see this come for Fallout 4 with the next gen update as well. They also added support for the Steamdeck, various console window improvements, including copy and paste support and new commands. There's also been some newly added valid commands for the .ini files, so there's actually some new commands to launch the game into a specific cell using the Skyrim custom.ini. They've also added macro supports, a new Skyrim console default.ini file that can be customized with a Skyrim console.ini, resolve the issue with the screen shrinking after using Alt-Tab, and of course, general stability improvements and optimizations. Now, they've also fixed issues specific for the Epic Game Store, PlayStation, including both PS4 and PS5, and Xbox. And beyond that, there's also been some pretty meaningful upgrades that have been made to the creation kit for Skyrim, as not only have they addressed some stability issues, which has a lot of those, but they also added some quality of life improvements and some new features such as Robo Voice, Lip Fuser, Lip Generator, and all new Papyrus functions. So definitely a more well-rounded and not so pointless update as we've seen in the past. This actually seems like it might even be worth the hassle, but of course I'm not a mod author. I'm not the one who has to deal with updating my mods for this, so I can't state that as a fact. It's just from the looks of it, it seems more worth the hassle than some previous updates. Of course, I still have my concerns with this new paid mod system, as I'm sure many of you do. Heck, there have even been mod authors themselves that have expressed concerns over this new system, and they're the ones who can benefit the most from it. In fact, some of them have even been pulling their mods from the platform in protest. There are serious things that could go wrong here, and BGS could eventually take this in a terrible direction, with some suggesting they could eventually start limiting the scope of what the free and open modding community is allowed to do. But for me, if I am completely honest, I have a hard time believing that BGS would not only go after the very thing that they're known for supporting, that being mods, but also directly spitting in the face of the very same people that are the ones making the content for this paid mod system to begin with. As well, mod authors disagree on a lot of things. I think they'd pretty much all agree that going after the free and open modding community would be an absolutely unforgivably shitty thing for Bethesda to do, whether they're making money from this creation system or not. Especially given that these same mod authors making paid creations right now, the ones that are already a part of this program, still release free mods to this day, and it's what gave them the opportunity to join the program to begin with. And so it just wouldn't make any logical sense for Bethesda to do that in my eyes. Not now, not ever, as it would directly impact this program negatively. They want to entice people to make content for their games, both free and paid, and they would kill the willingness to do so by killing off the very place people start their modding journey. And whether a mod is free or paid, Bethesda is making money from it one way or another, especially if mod support had anything to do with you buying their game. And in my opinion, Bethesda Game Studios hasn't shown any indication of wanting to shut down or restrict the free and open modding community either. In fact, in my opinion, they've displayed the exact opposite. As even more recently, they've given early access for upcoming patches to the script extender team so that they could prepare for updates. And that is made even more notable when you consider the fact that the script extender is something far beyond Bethesda's official mod support, as it's made by essentially hacking and reverse engineering the game, which most studios certainly do not support. They still release full mod editors for free for all of their games. They have supported modding long before trying to directly profit from it, and with this update and new platform, they even addressed one of the biggest Creation Club issues when it came to breaking mods, that being new creations requiring game updates, which is no longer the case with this new system. Supporting their thriving mod community is a part of what sets BGS apart. It is literally a selling point for their games, as not many studios offer mod support for their games, let alone on console. So despite all of my criticisms of BGS over the years, my distaste for paid mods, and the many concerns I still have with this system, BGS killing off or restricting the free and open modding community isn't one of my concerns. That is unfathomable to me, which is why this system doesn't really upset me the way that it's upsetting a lot of others. That is why I don't consider this to be another modpocalypse, and why I suggest the rest of the community pump the brakes on the doom and gloom. Of course, my thought process could be very ignorant right now. I could have my blinders on, so feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you agree with anything I've said here, or do you think I've lost my mind? Now, despite all my compliments when it comes to this update is far from perfect in typical BGS fashion, as it does come with some very serious issues when it comes to the game itself on Steam, and has broken mods more than usual. One of those issues was noted by Ian Pat, known for the script extender, that being that the new patch doesn't have the usual Steam wrapper that allows achievements and other Steam features to work, which won't be fixed until the next update from BGS, but there's no timeline for that as of yet. So if you want a quick workaround, you can create a text file named steam_appid.txt containing just 489830 and place it in the same folder as the game's executable, that being the root directory. Now, beyond that, SkyUI will also need another update, as it has been broken by the game itself and not SKSE. But Skyrim script extender, also known as SKSE 64, has been updated for the latest version, as have Address Library, the unofficial Skyrim Special Edition patch, and a number of plugins that were broken by this latest update. Unfortunately, since another update is expected to resolve the newly introduced issues, we can expect one or more patches, which will again break things temporarily. So if you have a mod list installed from before this major update and are wanting to temporarily downgrade so that you can continue on playing instead of dealing with all of these updates, it should be noted that the unofficial Skyrim Special Edition downgrade patcher by Helgari is currently broken and not working as intended, and won't receive an update until Helgari has time to rewrite the entire thing. So in the meantime, I'll be posting a temporary updated video as soon as possible on how to downgrade the game without the downgrade patcher, and whenever Helgari is able to put out a updated downgrade patcher, I'll be sure to make a video on that as well. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of the mod authors that not only provide content and support these games for free, but also for working your magic so quickly whenever the game gets updated. I truly appreciate it, the majority of the community appreciates it, and anyone else can f right off. Now, if you want to listen to me blabber about the unknown, you can check out my video on Fallout 4's Next Gen Update, which is on screen now, or you can click the other video if you want to keep feeding our friendly neighborhood algorithm. But that's it for this video. Thanks as always for watching, and until next time, this is Apoqsi, signing off.